The United Nations relies on two primary funding streams: assessed contributions, which are mandatory payments by member states, and voluntary contributions. The United States and China are the two major contributors to the UN budget. In the fiscal year 2025-2026, $3.72 billion was approved by the UN General Assembly to fund core organizational activities. Another $5.38 billion was allocated to UN peacekeeping operations. How approving an amount is one thing, getting it is another. As of May 2025, the UN's $3.7 billion regular budget was only 50% funded, with member states owing $2.4 billion in unpaid assessments. At least $2.7 billion is owed for peacekeeping operations globally. The funding gaps are already forcing drastic cuts. Some analysts believe one of the main funders, the US, is using it as leverage to get what it wants.
From my analysis and from what I've been reading, it's like this funding has been deliberately withheld as a political tactic of the United States towards the UN when it wants certain agendas passed. And definitely that is very bad.
Meanwhile, dwindling donations have also had an impact on humanitarian efforts. The UN's 2025 appeal had been slashed from $44 billion to $29 billion. The organization conceded that it had to hyper-prioritize its efforts and make life and death decisions about which people to help. The cuts target agencies like UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and peacekeeping missions including MONUSCO in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Many believe it's time for some countries to revisit the pledges they made when the UN was founded in the 1940s.
This is the time for every UN member state to pull up its act together and to support the programs of the UN. All the countries that still believe in the fundamental principles of the UN as per the founding charter.
UN support in Africa mainly focuses on peacekeeping, humanitarian aid, climate action, and food security. The funding gap has forced the World Food Programme to cut rations for millions of people in countries like Sudan and Somalia, where famine is reportedly worsening. In the DRC, a number of maternal health clinics supported by the UN have been closed, leaving many pregnant women at risk. Analysts say without fundamental financial reform, the UN's vital work for global peace and development remains at risk. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
4 African countries, Egypt, Ethiopia, Liberia, and South Africa, were among the founding members of the UN and also attended the signing of the UN Charter in San Francisco in 1945. They were part of a mission aimed at building a new international framework that would help prevent the occurrence of future wars and crises that could threaten the very existence of the smaller and poorer countries. But as CGTN's Robert Nagila reports, 80 years on, many believe the Charter has struggled to live up to its vision, especially in regions such as Africa.
At its inception in 1945, the UN Charter was regarded as a progressive instrument, one that could usher the world into a new era of global cooperation and a restraint on future wars. The Charter came into effect just as much of Africa was pregnant with a desire for change, or more accurately, independence from colonial rule. So, the Charter wasn't just seen as any other document, but a real symbol of hope.
The adoption of the UN Charter provided the struggle for independence additional legal ammunitions that the independent campaign made use of in the quest for achieving freedom from colonial rule.
Some African liberation movements, such as Frelimo in Mozambique, used the Charter to legitimize their struggle. They invoked its first article especially, that recognizes the principle of equal rights and self-determination. Fundamentally, though, the creation of the United Nations was, to use a line in the preamble of the UN Charter, to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. However, 80 years on, there are more conflicts in the world today than at any other point post-World War II, many of them here in Africa. Currently, there are more than 35 armed conflicts in Africa. Most of them are non-international, meaning they involve state and non-state actors or non-state actors within a country. They include conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Burkina Faso and Sudan. Under the UN Charter, the responsibility of maintaining international peace lies with the Security Council. It does this using the various tools at its disposal, including the use of sanctions and peacekeeping. Currently, the UN has 5 peacekeeping operations across Africa. They are in the DRC, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Western Sahara, and the contested Abyei region between Sudan and South Sudan. With nearly 17,000 personnel, MINUSCA in the Central African Republic is the largest mission. Despite some successes, experts say for the most part, the global body has failed to prevent or settle conflicts quickly as envisioned in the Charter.
This has reached its limits at the moment with the major shift in the power structures of the countries of the world, with the rise of geopolitical tensions and indeed the kind of conflict that we have seen on the African continent, in the Middle East and in Europe at the moment.
The Charter has further been eroded by the emergence of nationalism, protectionism and unilateralism, threatening the very existence of the global body.
The growing gulf between the promise of what the United Nations is established for and the realities of the lived experiences of people in the world has created this chasm and increasing crisis of legitimacy and credibility for the United Nations organization.
As a result, there are growing calls for reforms within the United Nations, especially the UN Security Council, with countries and groups seeking a system that reflects equality, unity and fairness as envisioned in the original UN Charter. Robert Nagela, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.